Hello friends, I'm Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about my most anticipated reads of 2025. Now, I have a list of probably more than 100 releases that I'm interested in. Either I want to pick them up and I know I want to pick them up, or I'm going to keep my eye out and see what other people are feeling about it before I decide to pick it up. But today is about like the 35 books that I don't want to say for sure I'm going to read by the end of the year, but I imagine is going to be my priority TBR. The things that I'm most anticipating, things that I think I want to read the most. So we're going to start out with the 10th book in the Wayward Children series. This is a series of children who cannot cope in the real world after visiting these fantastic worlds. They all have a separate door into some magical situation. There's different types of worlds. And in the 10th book, it's called Adrift in Currents Clean and Clear, and it follows Nadia. And just the original pitch of this says, Nadia has three mothers, the one who bore her, the country that poisoned her, and the one who adopted her. It's just very intriguing. We do know Nadia from earlier books, and I'm just excited to follow her story. I can't imagine I don't read this in the month that comes out and love it, so much anticipated. Next up on my list is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This is a story of a home for pregnant girls. It's set in the 70s, and these girls want to get their autonomy back. The adults are very much controlling their lives, and then they get their hands on this occult book and it changes things for them. Another one I'm very interested in is called Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. This is about a woman who writes this like sci-fi novel about androids and human extinction, and fiction and reality begin to blur together. So her novel starts to affect like real life, I think, and it just sounds like everything that I need. Water Moon by Samantha Yamboa is next on my list. It's about this woman who inherits a pawn shop where you can sell your regrets. Already an interesting concept. And then she ends up going on this quest with a customer to this mystical world in order to find her missing father. So that sounds very much for me. I also have in the weird realm Blob, a Love Story by Maggie Sue. This is about a woman who turns a sentient blob into the perfect boyfriend. That's really all I need to know. There's a whole synopsis if you want to learn more about this one or anything else, but just this initial idea, that's all we need, right? Sky Daddy by Kate Folk equally is about a strange woman in love with something strange. This one, she is sexually obsessed with planes, and she intends to die in one, and I'm just so intrigued to follow the story and what happens in here. Next, Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales, of course, I think is supposed to be the final book. It's like intended to be a trilogy, and I'm gonna read it for my members. My members and I have read it together every single time one of them has come out, and we're gonna have a live show about it if you feel like joining and chatting about it. This is about Emily Wilde and Wendell, who are academics, and they get into the world of the fairies to learn more about them, to write books about them, maps about them, and they fall in love, but also regularly bicker. It's such a good time. Next on my list is The River Has Roots. This one is set in a small town on the edge of fairy. Okay, 2025, apparently I'm getting more into fairy stuff. There are two sisters who cannot be separated even in death. That's what the pitch says. So basically they have these suitors in real life, and one of them decides to actually go for a possible love interest in the fairy world, and it like shakes up everything between them and causes a rift between the sisters, but we'll see what happens. It's a novella, which is very exciting. Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. This is the author of Migrations and Once There Were Wolves, which I adored so much. This one is about this family who lives on an island, and this woman washes ashore one day, and she has secrets. She finds out the family secrets, why they ended up on this island, and all of their different dynamics. I think it's gonna be so good. I'm so lucky. So many of my favorite authors have books coming out in 2025. Of course, Stephen Graham Jones, the top author for me, has one called Buffalo Hunter Hunter, and it has to do with vampires. So I'm obviously gonna love it. It's historical. It is written apparently as a diary, in a diary format, which is gonna be great. It has like religious themes. It's a revenge story. There's murdered indigenous folks and a vampire killer. I think it's gonna be so good. Then This Book Will Bury Me by Ashley Winstead. I feel like I've had a mixed history with Ashley Winstead, but I generally just, there's something about her writing that really works for me, even if I don't end up loving the actual story in the end. So this one's gonna be good, I think. We're following 5 amateur sleuths as they hunt for an elusive killer. So it's a true crime kind of story. They want to solve this mystery because no one else can do it, so they're gonna put all of their minds together and figure it out. And it's told 1 year after the Delphine massacres have occurred. And we have one character, I think, of the 5 who is reflecting on everything that went down. So there's gonna be, I imagine, some deaths, some reveals, and it's gonna be very good. The Last Session by Julia Bartz, who I love the writing retreat from last year. And there's part of me that wonders if it's just a one-hit wonder, like that was so good and I shouldn't continue. I don't know why with that author. A lot of times that happens with thrillers for me, but I'm gonna pick this one up and I hope I love it. It's about a social worker who has to confront her past at a wellness center. It sounds culty, which makes me think I probably shouldn't read it, but I'm obviously going to. Because it also has to do with like erotic stuff. She has to participate in increasingly intimate exercises. Maybe intimate just meant like emotionally intimate, but I feel like when I read the synopsis, it sounded like more sexually explicit. Did I make that up? I don't know, but I want to read it. One of my absolutely most anticipated, obviously all of these are, but I'm so excited to read this and I really hope it lives up to all of my expectations. It's Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Marie Griffin. This is about a florist and they get a new employee and they fall in love, but there's a man eating plant that is also in love with her and wants to eat her. I'm not sure yet if I'm gonna make this a Literally Dead book club pick because I said last year I wanted to make sure I picked more like realistic horror because I keep picking fantasy horror. And while I love it, I don't know if it's like the perfect thing for the book club. So it'll either be the book club pick or it'll be my members book club pick of the season. And we're definitely, regardless, gonna do a movie night with the besties for Little Shop of Horrors to just get in the right mindset and see if there are more links than we like even realize between the book and the movie, because I really hope there are. Next on my list, continuing with more authors that I have experience with. I guess that makes sense. My most anticipated things are almost exclusively from authors that I have read and loved before. I guess that makes sense. This is Immaculate Conception by Ling Huang. I love Natural Beauty last year last year at this point. This is about art school best friends and obsession. I think one friend becomes obsessed with another one. There's like this technology in this story that increases empathy, and obviously like things are gonna go wrong with this technology. They're gonna find out things behind the scenes of this technology. It's about like ethics, it's about authorship, it's about humanity, and I think it's gonna be for me. Next I put The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. I haven't loved a book from this author yet, and I don't know if this medieval horror is gonna be it either, but I have to read it. It just sounds very interesting. It's about a castle that's under siege. Everybody in it is dying, and then suddenly everyone is healed. And there's these divine figures that are controlling the castle, and they're like, we came in and we saved you all, so now worship us. And it's following the 3 women, the only ones in the castle who recognize like what's going on, that they're being manipulated, and I think they're gonna come together and take down the powers that be. Kill Creatures by Rory Power I'm very intrigued by because I read Wilder Girls and I haven't loved anything since, and I've been thinking I think Rory Power should go into more of a realistic, like if her stuff is thriller horror, she has gone more in a fantasy direction with that, and I want her to go into more of a thriller direction, and I think that's what Kill Creatures is. Also, I'm so obsessed with the cover. This is a story of this girl and 3 of her best friends. She murdered them or left them for dead a while ago, and now they're having a memorial for all of them, and one of them returns, and so she's gonna be caught out like for this murder. There's gonna be exposing of secrets. It's about violence and revenge, and I hope I love it. I really hope I love it. This is an author I haven't read from, Wendy Wagner, but this cover and this title and this concept just sounds totally up my alley. It's called Girl in the Creek, and it's cli-fi cosmic horror. It's about a woman whose brother went missing in a national forest. She goes in there to find him, and instead she finds this woman in the creek. But before she can save her, she like disappears. And then she goes to find her again, and she disappears again. Next, Silvia Moreno Garcia. I believe this is gonna be my first 5-star from this author because I keep giving such high ratings. It's never quite a 5. And The Bewitching, I think it's gonna be great. This is about 3 different women in 3 different eras who encounter danger and witchcraft. That's kind of all I know, but I'm obviously gonna pick it up. So it's multi-generational. It's one of the characters is an author, I think. There's obviously witches involved. I'm gonna read it, it's gonna be great. I'm also gonna read Too Old for This by Samantha Downing. This is about a retired serial killer and her quiet life is interrupted one day when a journalist comes to her door and starts talking to her about the murder she was involved in back in the day. And she has to decide if like this journalist should die, if she can like come out of retirement for this one last kill to hide her secrets, or if it's time for things to be exposed. I have had a mixed history with Samantha Downing, but most of the time it's been great. And I think this one will be great as well. Next, Isabel Cañas, another author that I love. The Possession of Alba Diaz sounds so good. Demonic presence that is awoken in a mine in Mexico. And we have a main character who is hallucinating, having convulsions, seemingly possessed, and she has to get the help of a man who she shouldn't. So it's like a historical romance, horror, gothic vibe that I love the cover of, and I think is gonna be great. The End of the World as We Know It is on my radar. It just means I have to reread The Stand this year, which is very intimidating, but I really want to reread it before I get into this collection, which isn't something I could have ever imagined existing. And I just think it's so cool, the concept that all of these authors wrote a short story that exists in the world of The Stand. And I don't want to know anything about the stories. I don't want to know if it's like reimagining things, if it's just stories of characters that are in it, or things on the periphery, or just completely imagined stories. But there's so many authors in here that I've read and loved, and I just think it's going to be such a good collection, and I can't believe it's happening. Of course, on most people's TBR, I feel, for the year is Kate Basis, or however you pronounce it, by R.F. Kuang. This follows Alice, who wants to become the brightest mind in her field of magic, and her professor is like the greatest magician to ever exist, and he dies. And apparently it's partially her fault. So she has to go into hell and bring him back. She also has to bring her rival with her because he is also, you know, one of the top magic people, and they have to put aside their differences, go on this quest, and they're probably gonna fall in love. I think his name is Peter, and Peter and Alice in hell. Sounds so good. Next, I have Hot Wax by ML Rio on my list. This doesn't have too much of a synopsis, but it says it's a love letter to 90s rock and roll. It's about rocker misfits and a tour that fell apart. I think it's a thriller, and while I didn't love Graveyard Shift this year, I still have such a place in my heart for If We Were Villains, and I just think that Hot Wax, whatever it turns out to look like and be, is gonna be for me. I feel it. At some point in 2025, we should be getting the second book in the Amina Al-Sarafi series by Shannon Chakraborty, which is this pirate story. Never thought I would love a pirate story, but because the first one was so fun, and it was like cozy fantasy, but it was also action-packed, I think I'm gonna love the second one whenever it comes out. Hopefully it's soon. I also have A Mouthful of Dust by Niveau on my list. This is Singing Hills book number 6, and you're following the cleric Chi going around taking down stories as they do. In this one, it's very much a story about the rich versus the poor, and we have indulgent royals at the forefront, and there's a famine happening, and Chi is trapped in this like castle or manor and has to confront like what's happening with the caste system, I guess. The Raven Boys graphic novel is coming out in 2025, which I'm like terrified to look at. I don't know why, because I don't love a graphic novel in general. I would never really pick one up on purpose, but this one, not only do I have to pick up, but like I'm anticipating it, obviously, because it's seeing my favorite series in images and with a different, like adapted into this different type of story. And I trust it's gonna be great, but I don't know, and I don't know how to make content about it, but I have to at some point. Then Neil Sharpson has something coming out. This is the author of Knock Knock Open Wide, which I absolutely loved in 2024. It's called The Burial Tide, and it's Irish folklore. There's a woman who can't remember her death, and a doctor who only treats the dead. Like, doesn't that just sound intriguing right off the bat? We have Mara, who's trying to regain her memories, and I just think it's gonna be that perfect, like, weird horror that I loved from this author. Next up, 13 Months Haunted by Jimmy Giuliano. Dead 11 had so much potential for me. I didn't end up loving it, but I recommend it to so many people. This one is set in the 2000s in middle school. It's gonna be very nostalgic for me. And we have a new girl who starts there, and her mother is a witch. Or suspected to be a witch, and the librarian sees this lonely girl and befriends her, but I think really bad things are gonna happen. There's a virus apparently going around. What does it mean? I don't know. I can't wait for it. I think I'm gonna pick up the newest Rachel Harrison. I did skip her last release because of the content, but I think that Play Nice sounds like it's gonna be for me. It's about some sisters, and they grew up in this possessed house, like objectively possessed, haunted, and I think their mother dies, and they go back to the house and they have to decide what to do with it. And one of them is like a social media influencer, and she wants to renovate it for content. And one or more of the other sisters are very against it, and they just have to be there together and I think experience the hauntings or stop the hauntings. I don't know. I'm excited to read it. This one is really for the cover. I know so many people have read Hailey Piper and loved her stuff. I have not delved into the backlist of horror by Hailey Piper yet, but I think I'm gonna pick up A Game in Yellow because it's about sex magic, and that just sounds like what I need to read. There's a couple who wants to spice up their sex life, and there's this book that they get into contact with, or it's a play. I think it's a play. And if you read the play, you like fall into madness. But if you get into it like just enough, it gives you this like lusty, hallucinatory situation. And I just need to read it. It sounds like a mix of some other horror books that I've loved, and I hope that I adore it. And lastly on my list is But Not Too Bold by Hache Pueyo. This is being translated in 2025. It's a gothic monster romance. We're following a character who is new to this manor, who has to take over a job to protect something, take care of something. Is it the spiders? The manor is full of spiders. That's the only thing I really know. Is the monster she's gonna fall in love with also a spider? I'm not sure. I want to go into it not knowing too much, but that's just the general vibe, and it sounds right up my alley. So that's all the weird stuff mostly weird stuff that I'm planning on reading in 2025. I have a list of so many more. Maybe I'll just flash some on the screen now in different genres that if you're asking, oh, are you gonna read this? Are you gonna read this? Are you interested in this? I am. There is like fantasy in here, there's romance in here, there's a Snow White retelling from T. Kingfisher coming, there's a multi-generational V.E. Schwab coming, there's social media inspired Anna Marie McLemore that I can't figure out if I want to read yet. Kimberly Lemming has something to do with aliens coming out. There's so much that I am interested in, but those were my 35, I think it was 35 initial things that if I look back at the end of the year and haven't read these, I think I would be disappointed in myself. Of course, as always, let me know in the comments if any of these are also on your radar, if I put them on your radar now, or something that you think that I should know about and I should definitely prioritize next year. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me for this day of Lullamas, and I'll see you tomorrow with another one.